welcome to the City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. Today is Friday, November 18th, and I welcome you all to the state's premier civic affairs event. I'm Melody Rose, the president of City Club, and I would like to welcome all of you here today. Those of you joining us at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio, and those watching on Portland Community Media's CityNet 30. Today we welcome Zari Santner, who will discuss how we can best cultivate Portland's living legacy, its parks. But first, a few announcements. To kick off our program, I'd like to give a warm welcome to a few of City Club's newest members. We have with us today 3 new members from the Bus Project, and I'd like to welcome them all. If you would please stand and let us welcome you. Alvin Ma, Mariana Lindsay, and Danny Bernstein. Please stand so we can welcome you. City Club's corporate and media partners are essential to the vitality and sustainability of all of City Club's various activities. I'd like to thank our generous media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine, and to extend our deep appreciation to the Friday Forum fall corporate sponsors. Please join me in offering our sincerest thanks to the fall sponsors, AARP Oregon, Baron Liebman, and PGE. We could not do this without you. And of course, if your company or firm would like to join this august group in sponsoring these activities, please see our staff at the back of the room. City Club's annual fund drive supports vital club activities, including our research projects and the Friday Forum that you are enjoying here today. I'm very happy to be able to announce that during the month of November, DHM Research will match every annual fund donation with an additional gift of $20. There are more than 100 of you in the room today, and if each of you were to give a gift, DHM would be able to, in turn, match that gift with $2,000. As Adam Davis, the D in DHM Research says, City Club is the port in the storm where we find civil and thoughtful consideration of the choices we all face. We need City Club today more than ever, so please donate generously. In December, City Club's New Leaders Council is pleased to offer 3 events: a tour of outside-in facilities where they work to end youth homelessness, a panel discussion on greenwashing, the practice of attempting to hide environmentally destructive practices through marketing, and a Portland Trivia Night. Sponsored by DHM Research and the Port of Portland, New Leaders Council invites community members of all ages to join these upcoming events. And you can find more details on the City Club website, pdxcityclub.org. Following today's speech, we'll be welcoming City Club members to the microphone for a question and answer session with our speaker. In addition, we invite all of those of you who are here today to use the index cards on your table to submit questions. During the board host question, City Club staff will circulate around the room and pick up those index card questions and bring them to me so that I can read them from the microphone. We're sure you'll come up with some great questions today. And now to our program. National studies increasingly demonstrate that parks are an essential component of community life, producing measurable health, environmental, social, and economic benefits. 10 years ago, with overwhelming public support, Portland Parks and Recreation adopted the Parks 2020 Vision Plan with the goal of ensuring that all Portlanders would enjoy the benefits of an equally distributed parks and recreation system as the city continues to develop. Yet a decade later, progress has been slow. Competing demands on the city's general fund and a continuous downward trend of funding for parks likely make the plan unachievable by the year 2020. Today, Zari Santner, the recently retired director of Portland Parks and Recreation, will offer alternative approaches for sustainable management of the city's parks and recreation system, and will challenge us to reconsider how we ought to invest in this system's future. Zari Santner is familiar to many of you. She is a landscape architect with a master's degree from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. Lucky for us, she moved to Oregon in 1980 and began her employment with the Portland Parks and Recreation System 2 years later. In 1994, after the passage of the first general obligation bond for the parks in 50 years, she became the program manager for the implementation of the bond's 114 projects. She was tasked to complete the entire program in just 5 years, which she did on time and on budget. 3 years later, she became the first female director of the Portland Parks and Recreation System. In June, after nearly 30 years at the agency, Zari retired. 3 weeks ago, Portland Parks and Recreation won the 2011 National Gold Medal Award for Excellence in Park System Management and Stewardship, bestowed by the American Academy for Park and Recreation Administration. This tremendous honor is due in many ways to the work and visionary leadership of today's guest, Zari Santner. Zari, our most sincere congratulations to you and to the many whose hard work contributed to this award. And now, please help me welcome our guest, Zari Santner, to the podium. Whoa. I think
To be honest, I asked for it, but still too high. Good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here to talk to you, and certainly an honor to talk to you about our treasured park system, and now a gold medal award-winning park system. 2.5 years ago, as Director of Parks and Recreation, I was asked to come and talk to you about the state of our park system. Today, as a citizen, albeit a very well-informed one, I want to talk to you about the challenges that are facing our treasured park systems and the opportunities that are available to overcome those challenges, and the role that we as citizens can play to make sure that we are better stewards of this nationally recognized system. As was mentioned in very, very kind introductions, I began my career with Portland Parks in 1982, and my career with Parks spanned 3 decades. I became director in 2003 after over 20 years in a variety of positions, starting from a frontline parks planner, and then became a senior manager, and finally the director. And I held that position for 8 years until my retirement this past July. And now the reins have been passed on to the new director of Portland Parks and Recreation, Mike Abadi. Mike, would you please stand up? I want to thank Commissioner Fish and congratulate him for his decision to buck the trend in City Hall by hiring a very expert professional as the head of the Bureau. Mike has extensive experience in parks and city planning and urban design, and he's held in high regards both in parks community and design community. When I spoke to you in 2008, I began by talking about the extent of our park system, how it started. As was mentioned by Melody, its social, environmental, economic, and personal benefits that this great system provides to our citizens, and how the quality and diversity of this park system helps distinguish Portland as almost all the time as one of the 10 most livable cities in the country and internationally. Today, what I want to talk to you about is what we need to do to keep it that way. When I began to prepare my speech for today, I learned that Portland Parks and Recreation had received the Gold Medal Award for Excellence in Management from the American Academy of Parks and Recreation Administration and the National Recreation and Parks Association. This is quite an honor and an accomplishment worth celebrating. It's important, however, to know that this national competition was not a beauty contest. And it was not about the size, numbers, variety of parks, recreation facilities, or programs. The selection was based on a set of management criteria, and the applicants were asked to document how they met those criteria. An excellent park system doesn't happen accidentally. This award recognizes the planning, systems, and partnerships that need to be in place to create and sustain an outstanding park system. Let me share with you some of the specific questions that were asked and highlight what made us a contender and ultimately a winner on our first try. First, they asked, does the organization have a comprehensive long-term plan consistent with its mission and embraced by its citizens? As Melody mentioned, we do. The Parks 2020 Vision Plan, a citizen-driven effort, was adopted in 2001 by City Council. It envisions a growing city with nature and green spaces woven in the fabric of its infrastructure and development. It is also a vision for the protection of cities' identity as a livable place. It focuses providing respite from urban density, allowing people to connect with nature and to each other, and giving all residents access to parks and facilities equally. Do we have a plan? Check, we do. And then they asked, what policies, strategies, and management tools has the Bureau put in place to advance that plan so it doesn't sit on a shelf and collect dust? The park's ongoing strategic plans are tools for implementing the goals of 2020 plan. The asset register and associated management plans help the Bureau keep track of the condition of its assets. The Bureau's ongoing cost of service analysis informs decision about program fees and cost recovery. In 2009, with important leadership from Parks Board, the Bureau measured its progress towards 2020 plan's goals. And the findings of that study are reported in the Parks 2020 Progress Report. I'd say we nailed that question. Third, they asked, is Bureau flexible in terms of shifting resources, programs, or project priorities in response to changing demographics, user preferences, or community values? From the skate park strategic plan to dog off-leash areas and many initiatives like that, the Bureau was able to demonstrate how it responds to the recreation needs of the community while striking a balance between conservation and protection of its assets with its existing resources. Fourth, they asked, what is the scope and breadth of the Bureau's reliance on partnerships, sponsorships, intergovernmental collaborations, and public-private partnerships. Many of you here know that Portland Parks has over 102 friends and partners. These friends and partners contribute over 760,000 hours of volunteer services, which is the equivalent of 211 full-time employees and with the value of over $6 million a year. And Bureau has strong partnerships with Metro Bureau of Environmental Services and 5 Portland public school districts. So there's a check for that question. Fifth, they asked, what efforts are made to promote stewardship and best practices for the system environmental and cultural resources, and what management practices does the Bureau employ to protect and preserve its assets? Portland Parks was the first organization in the nation that was certified as salmon safe. Its environmental stewardship programs, such as No Ivy League, the Integrated Pest Management, the Sustainability Plan, and Protect the Best, have established Bureau's leadership in the stewardship of over 7,500 acres of protected natural areas. And finally, they asked, does the Bureau measure its effectiveness and efficiency regularly? Absolutely. Portland Parks has developed a comprehensive performance measurement system with performance measures linked directly to the desired outcome of every single 3-year strategic plans. It also manages an annual survey research program that continually monitors recreation needs of our community. The Bureau conducts an annual customer satisfaction survey in its recreation facilities, and through the city auditor's annual service efforts and accomplishment reports, Bureau keeps track of people's citizen satisfactions with the quality of their parks. These surveys have shown that, consistent with the goal of 2020 plan, the use of our parks and recreation facilities have grown by 15% in the past 10 years. 96% of regular recreation facility customers rated the overall quality of the services they receive in our recreation facilities as very good to good. And citizens' approval rating of the overall quality of their parks is at an all-time high of 86%. I think that answer deserved a really big check mark. So, these gold medal management practices have positioned Portland Parks and Recreation to meet the challenges of the future head on. And I wish we could stop right there. But that's not the end of the story. Bold steps need to be taken if we are ever to achieve the goals of adopted 2020 plan. The 2020 plan envisions a system where every citizen would have a park within 15 minutes or half a mile from their home. Today, 77% of Portlanders have that level of service, up from 74% in 2001. That's only 3% progress in 10 years. That's not acceptable to me, and I hope it's not acceptable to you. Bold steps were taken in 1903 when an independent park board hired the landscape architect, John Charles Olmsted, to create a visionary new plan for Portland's park. That plan was used to excite and energize Portlanders, to support levies and bond measures, to buy land and develop parks throughout the city. In more recent history, strong leaderships and citizen support had resulted in similar new investments in our park system. It was mentioned before, the passage of the 1994 Parks Bond measure was the first for Portland Parks and Recreation in nearly 50 years at that time. 2 levies were passed, one in 1989 and a more recent one in 2003. A system development charge was initiated in 1998. It has generated $64 million and has leveraged another $40 million to buy parkland and develop them. In addition, the formation of a Parks Board and Parks Foundation now provides a structure for citizen support of parks. Unfortunately, in spite of all of this, it has taken 100 years to implement Olmsted's vision. And along the way, we've lost a few opportunities to implement some of his recommendations because it took us so long. Today, it is our turn to make gutsy decisions that will ensure the future of our precious park system. Let's not waste 77 years to provide parks, facilities, and programs for all members of our community. What's holding us back? A lack of stable and predictable funding. Portland Parks is the 3rd largest general fund supported bureau after police and fire. Nearly 60% of total bureau's budget is supported by general fund, the majority of which goes directly into operating the system. The bureau makes up the balance from revenues, with revenues from fees and interagency agreements and partnerships. Since the adoption of 2020 plan in 2001, the Bureau's share of city's discretionary general fund has hovered between 10 to 12%. At the same time, parks acreage has grown by 1,000 acres. 31 of those acres are in developed parks, such as Holly Farm and Director Park. During the same time, a state-of-the-art LEED Platinum indoor pool was added to East Portland Community Center, and the University Park Community Center was doubled in size in order to serve a low-income neighborhood in which it's located better. A major gap in 40 Mile Loop was closed with the construction of spring water on Willamette, which connects the East Bank Esplanade to the original East-West spring water trail. All these capital investments were made with very little contribution from the city's general fund. At the lowest point of the general fund support in 2002, the Bureau had to ask the voters to pass a 5-year levy as a stopgap measure to make up for the reduced general fund support, so that the pools, community centers, restroom in parks could stay open. I'm sure some of you remember that. When the parks levy expired in 2008, Commissioner of Parks Dan Salzman championed and the City Council agreed to fill half of that gap with increased general fund appropriation for parks. This was possible because City General Fund was enjoying a healthy growth during the bubble economy. That unprecedented infusion of general fund money proved to be an aberration. Of the original $6 million, $4.8 million, or 11% of Bureau's discretionary funding, has been lost in budget cuts since 2006. With this year's cut, we'll be back where we were in 2002. You may think it's fair that during bad economy and when the city's general fund is in decline, so every bureau should bear the burden. I would tend to agree with you. However, since 2006, the city's general fund revenues have grown, albeit at a slower rate than was forecasted. And we have seen the addition of new city services and expanded general fund support for services that used to rely on non-general fund sources. The simple fact is that competing needs, increasing pressure to expand city services, the complexity of running a growing city with the commissioner form of government, and the political pressure and public support for protecting public safety bureaus from equitable cuts, the City Council is forced to look at Parks' share of general fund as potential source of revenue to fund other programs. It's generally assumed that Portland Parks can continue to provide the same level of service with less general fund dollars because it can theoretically recoup the loss with revenues from increased fees or with more partnerships. In my view, the Bureau is adversely awarded for being successful and entrepreneurial by the eroding and fluctuating general fund support. Already 25% of the general fund support is collected from the fees. And partners, there are limits what partners can do. Significant increase in fees price out people with low income and reduce access for those people who need park services the most. Potential future partners are more interested in contributing towards enhancement of park services rather than serve as backfill to diminishing general fund. It's clear with the current level of and approaches to funding, we can't achieve 2020 plan's goal of equity of access for all Portland residents, a goal that is now resoundingly affirmed by the Portland plan. Neither are we able to protect Portland Park's $1 billion worth of public assets, an asset that's so integral to the identity, prosperity, and livability of our city. I know we all want Portland Parks to achieve the goals of 2020. If not by the year 2020, then certainly sooner than what it took to accomplish Olmsted's plan. If we want to do that, something's got to change. I want to offer today 2 short-term strategies and 1 long-term solution to help stabilize parks resources. First, we must pass a bond measure to stop further decline in the condition of our parks asset. And reduce major inequities in distribution of parks and facilities. And this needs to happen soon because the problem simply grows larger and it becomes unaffordable later. Every year, during the budget process, the City Council receives a report from all infrastructure bureaus about the condition of their assets and how much is needed annually to fix those that are in poor condition or degrading. The Parks Bureau is one of 2 infrastructure bureaus with the most need for this purpose. As I mentioned before, the Bureau has an extensive database known as Asset Register, which identifies every asset within the system, its replacement value, and its condition. I think it's worth repeating that the current replacement value of Bureau's built asset is $1 billion. The industry standard of funding for major maintenance of assets is a minimum of 2%, preferably 4% of the asset's replacement value. Portland Park's expenditure on major maintenance, which is to fix leaky roofs and windows or update plumbing and electrical services, has historically been far below the minimum standards. Only in the past 6 years, with a gradual reallocation of the operating funds, has it grown to 1.9% of the replacement value. The consequence is a backlog of deferred maintenance, now requiring $28.5 million per year for 20 years to fix them. The meager general fund support of approximately $1 million a year for capital improvement is used only to address the most urgent needs, leaving a funding gap of $27.5 million annually. Insufficient general fund support for capital improvements in our city has a long history, and to be fair, is not unique to Portland. Deferred maintenance are often remedied by government agencies with the passage of general obligation bond measures. Passing a bond measure requires the champion a significant grassroots support. Once passed, those funds leverage additional funds, and if we do a good job, citizens are willing to support additional future bond measures so that you can begin to make a significant progress in fixing the deferred maintenance. So, the last time, and the only time in the past 60 years that Portland Parks has passed a major bond measure was in 1994. At that time, Parks Commissioner Charlie Hales was the champion. Many of you in this room and those who are listening here today, they provided the grassroots support to pass that measure. That $58.8 million bond measure leveraged an additional $8 million. Its success led to the passage of 2003 levy, championed by then Commissioner Jim Francisconi. That levy generated $50 million for 5 years to pay for operation of the park services, basically to stop parks restrooms from closure and keep the recreation facilities and pools open. So it's time to do it again. In 2008, the City Council directed the Bureau to prepare a capital improvement bond within a few years, and park staff have worked diligently to gather the necessary information for that purpose. They are ready to go. One of my greatest disappointment is that we were not able to do that on my watch. I believe it is our collective responsibility to convince the city that this is a high priority. And now my second short-term strategy, and this has to do with the budget tradition of thinning the soup. Parks is currently developing its budget for next year and has been instructed to make 4 to 8% reduction in its general fund share. Frankly, Parks' back is to the wall. For 6 out of the past 8 years, we've been cutting the budget, thinning the soup, as it were. We all know that watery soup has very little nutritional value. It's time to explore other options. I want to encourage the Bureau to explore the viability of a service delivery model that relies more on non- and for-profit partners to run and manage entire recreation programs and facilities, while the Bureau continues its responsibility for major maintenance and capital improvement. This is not completely a new idea, but an expansion of practices that have already worked. Our 5 municipal golf courses, for example, are managed entirely by for-profit concessionaires, while Bureau focuses on maintaining the grounds and buildings and investing for the capital improvement. Our soccer and baseball recreation programs are managed by nonprofit leagues, while the Bureau continues to provide major maintenance and capital improvement for the grounds. Nationally, there are abundant examples of private-public partnerships where, with careful consideration to mission of service delivery to all, especially those with limited resources, partners are able to carry a greater level of responsibility for management if they are given the flexibility and authority to manage the programs without political interference, and with the commitment of the public agency to hold its end of the bargain. I'm not suggesting that we should jump into adopting this approach, but we should at least support and encourage the Bureau to explore its feasibility. It might be a far better solution than the certain closure of facilities and the loss of progress in the future. And now to my long-term solution. A solution which I believe would lead to stability of ongoing funding for parks and recreation services in Portland. My conclusion is that we've done a lot to keep the ship afloat, and we've made some great strides. But what we have been able to do cannot overcome the downward trend in general fund support. It's time for a bold action, an action that was suggested 11 decades ago by John Charles Olmsted. In his 1903 report to the Parks Board, he wrote, and I quote, "It has been demonstrated by experience in many cities that the park system, more than any other of the undertakings of a city, should be managed independently of the common council or legislative body of city government," end of quote. And he goes on to give an array of reasons why, and concludes by stating that the most successful government of important park system were those that took the power of making the annual parks appropriation from the city government and placed it in the hands of a small board of parks commissioners as its governing body. That sentiment was shared by C.P. Kaiser, Portland's longest-serving superintendent of parks, which he stated in 1924 at a City Club forum. He proclaimed the period when Portland's parks were in the hands of an independent board as, I quote, a period that will always stand out as one of achievements, end of quote. He offered two reasons in support of an independent parks board. Kaiser believed that park services are metropolitan in scope, and their use will extend beyond the city's boundaries. He also said, and I quote, "Experience has abundantly proven, both here and elsewhere, that the best and ablest citizens of your community are willing and anxious to serve without compensations on your park board, while few or none of the same can be induced to stand for election as your city council," end of quote. As you can see, good ideas hardly ever die. I believe the formation of a park and recreation district makes sense for Portland because it's compelling on so many levels. And here are a few reasons that I believe that this is not an outrageous idea. One, citizens find districts to be more transparent in service delivery, i.e. they know what they're getting for the money that they're paying. In Beaverton and other areas of Washington County served by Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation, when people get their property tax bills, they know exactly how much of the $1.31 per thousand assessed value of their property goes to provide parks and recreation services in their community. All of it. When you and I get our tax bills, we know how much we're paying for police and fire pensions or the urban renewal area, but do any of you know how much of the $7.21 per thousand assessed value the city of Portland collects from property taxes goes to parks? Do you want to know? 93 cents per thousand this year. What's different last year probably would be different next year. Probably would be far less next year. Second, districts have political independence, which allows them to respond more quickly to the needs of their customers. All the members of an independent parks board are equally and closely informed about all aspects of district's operation. No one member spends precious time to inform and cajole another board member before decisions are made. 3, districts enjoy financial predictability and stability. Districts, like any municipal government, they develop financial plans. They have financial planners who can forecast revenue trends based on economic data and a projected collection of fees and develop 5-year operating and capital funds, just like the municipal government does. The difference is, in municipal government, the city council can choose from one year to the next to spend money on new resources, on new services, or spend money on new projects. And therefore, there is no relationship between that financial forecasting and what the council would do. 4, districts' boards of directors are focused on parks and recreation services. They're not distracted by other matters, and generally do not see the Parks Board as a stepping stone to other elected offices. 5, districts are likely to have lower overhead costs than municipal governments. This is particularly true for larger bureaus like Parks and Recreation, where they are asked to carry a bigger load of the general fund overhead as subsidies to smaller bureaus. And finally, districts board and staff can undertake long-range planning with more confidence and continuity, and the board's decisions are more likely to be based on long-term goals rather than short-term gains. And there are abundant examples in nations and locally of these district models. So, I'm being told that I have to cut it. I can share with you all the models that are available, both locally and nationally, if you ask me later. So, here's how I want to end. I hope that by now you agree with me that this is not an outrageous idea. We must find a will to seriously consider establishing a park district and demand that our elected officials have the courage to champion the cause. This is the right time because we have the support structure in place with the Portland Parks Advisory Board, the Parks Foundation, and the Intertwine Alliance. We have the support structure in place to do this. And finally, the last 10 seconds. You know, Portland has a long-standing love affair with her parks. They are at the heart of what we love about our city. Future generations deserve an award-winning park system secured for them by us. It's really up to us. Are you willing to step up to the plate? I am. Thank you.
Before I introduce our Friday Forum host, if you have written a question on one of the index cards, please hold it up now and hold it up high so the staff can retrieve it from you and bring it to me. The first question for our speaker will be from our Friday Forum host, City Club Governor Promise King. Promise is the executive director of the Oregon League of Minority Voters and also wrote on race and politics as a columnist for the Portland Tribune. He has been a City Club member since 2008. Promise?
Zari, I will be remiss if I didn't thank you for your outstanding job for the city. Your substance is great. I'm just glad you're not running for office. You left me with a lot of questions. I'm just going to ask 20 of them. But my first question is, you asking, on one hand, asking for handing the parks management to an outside district. On the other hand, you told us about inequities. Why should those who feel that they've not gained better in the scheme of things vote for another bond? Why should they vote for another bond?
Well, I hope I was able to explain why we are not going to remove these inequities with the level of general fund support that Portland Parks is receiving. And let me be very clear. This is not, again, unique to Portland. Parks and Recreation Services, when they are part of a municipal government across the country, are always playing third or fourth fiddle to other larger bureaus. And the areas where they have been able to remove those equities has been when they are in the hands of people who are just focused on delivering the services that the community want from them. And they can plan methodically in chipping away. I am not saying that by becoming a district, you can take care of this overnight. What I'm saying is that you're creating stability, predictability, so that the Bureau as an organization, the commissioners can plan, and that plan would stay in focus till the job gets done.
Thank you, Zari. We'll now take questions from the floor. As always, members are invited to the microphone to ask their question. Asking questions at the microphone is a privilege of City Club membership, so please identify yourself as a club member and ask your question in under 30 seconds. Otherwise, you're likely to see the famous City Club question mark. Also, if you're still looking to hand over your index card, now's the time to raise it up high so that the staff can see it. Please.
Peter Fenner, member of the City Club. As I understood it, we did have an independent parks organization at one time. Why did we move away from that? And what is the reason, what's the biggest obstacle to moving back into that form?
Great question. Yes, we did. From 1900 until 1913, the City of Portland had an independent parks board, and that board brought in John Charles Olmsted and laid the foundation for this great park system that we have. And the reason it got disbanded was that in 1913, all the boards and commissions in City of Portland were disbanded, and the current commissioner form of government was created. And then the parks, in the beginning, was turned over to Public Works, and then later it became an independent bureau. Now, what does it take to make it happen? A lot of hard work, and honestly, political courage, hard work, and we need to think about this in the context of not just the City of Portland. Many people, a lot of people are moving to the east fringes of our city into more affordable areas. And people in Gresham who don't have much of a park system, I'm sorry to say, they are coming to our areas to use it. So we need to really think broadly in terms of how we do this. And that will require a lot of political maneuvering.
I'll take one now from the tables. When I see that only 77% of Portlanders live within a half mile of a park, I wonder, is the problem that we need to build more parks, or that we need to build more mixed income housing within half a mile of our existing parks, schools, and community centers?
Well, we could do both, I think, because we still have a lot of land, and the city is going to grow. You know, my idea, it's not like an idea for the next 10 years. Just think about it. We inherited this park system that was laid out for us 100 years ago, and we got it to this point. We need to think about 100 years from now. What are we going to do today? So 100 years from now, there are people sitting in this great place and are being proud of being an award-winning having an award-winning park system.
Thank you. Back to the microphone.
Hello, Roberta Palmer, City Club member. I'm afraid that the property tax is reaching its limit. It tries to do too much. We couldn't even pass a school construction bond last year. Why don't we consider new reliable revenue sources, like, for example, a citywide food and beverage tax that could be shared by the schools and by the parks?
Great question. Fabulous. You know, I hope you understand that forming a district doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be based on property taxes. Just think about it. Even if it was, if we said to City of Portland, you know, that 93 cents per thousand value that you're spending on parks, just give us that. Nothing more. It's not going to affect anybody. Give us that 93 cents per thousand. And then, as citizens, we can try to look into other source of funding. So that's a great question.
Steve Shell, member. Zari, thanks for your service for the 30 years to the city. We appreciate it. I have an integration question that follows the previous question. If we're limited at $15 a thousand, which is what our voters tell us to do, and we put that 93 cents up into a separate point, what we do is we limit flexibility of the city government to respond to changing conditions. So one of the integration questions that I'd like you to at least address is what about that overall integration? And then as another aspect of the integration, how do we assure that an independent park district will integrate with Portland's comprehensive planning system?
Well, the part of the speech that I had to cut off were the examples. Two great examples of how big city park system are functioning as districts. Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a great model where they have an independent board and they have an independent source of funding. They have great park system. In fact, we are competitive. And they work fabulously with their city governments, with their urban renewal agencies. So the same ways that now Portland Parks is partnering with its planning department, with its urban renewal agencies, that will continue. Another example is City of Chicago. You all have seen a huge renaissance in City of Chicago. They do have a dedicated park district. So there are absolute ways of collaborating and aligning with the city.
Another question from our tables. Should the region cooperate to pursue regional funding for operating and maintaining our parks and natural areas?
Well, I tell you, I struggle with that quite a bit. It depends, it really depends how much and for what purpose. If the regional source of funding is only for limited aspects of the park system, and it comes as an assistance, as help, the past history has shown that when resources are brought in, actually, Bureau suffers more by the general fund reductions. Very similar to what happened with the state, actually. Remember when first that Measure 66 for Parks measure passed? The state legislature just dumped the entire state funding into that, no support. It's just inevitable, and that's the part that really worries me. This really needs to be thought out very, very clearly. And I think, by working cooperatively, maybe there's something that could be merged together.
Well, on that note, we've run out of time for further questions and we'll have to stop for today. Please join us in 2 weeks after we take a break for the Thanksgiving holiday for Elisa DeZono, who will moderate a discussion between Port of Portland Director and City Club Governor Bill Wyatt and economist John Tapania about Portland's economic recovery and the role of trade. As we close, please join me in expressing our deep appreciation for today's speaker, Zari Santner. We are adjourned.